Hello everyone. Today I am going to build an analog second hand for a clock. Probable Prime did an excellent video tutorial for this particular process in the previous place. Things are a little bit different in Resonite, so seeing as he hasn't made a video yet, I figured I would go ahead and do it. So for this you're going to need the Protoflux tooltip and the developer tooltip. I'm going to start with the developer tooltip because I need to spawn the item that is going to be the second hand, which I'm just going to use a regular box. When you create a new item and you have this dialog, I find that if you move it a little bit farther away from your face, Resonite will not spawn the object right in your face. I'm secondary clicking on this so that I can go ahead and bring up an inspector. Now, one of the things I like to do when I'm working with these objects is I reset the position and the scale. What's important here is the direction of the z-axis, because that's the axis that we're going to be rotating this around. So now I know that it's pointing away from me, which is fine. And I would like to shape this as well. So I will go into detail in a separate video as to why you would want to monkey with the box mesh when you're building the box mesh settings here rather than the scale. It's something that Probable Prime recommends, and it's something I didn't really comprehend until dealing with materials later. I'm not going to cover that now because I just want to do the clock part of it. But at any rate, let's go ahead and shape this. I think I would like it to be fairly small, and I think I would like it to be quite thin. I'm going to do 1.5 meters tall, and then make it skinny on the z-axis. So there's our arm. Okay, it's delightful. So what I want to do is for it to rotate not around the center of the object, but I want it to rotate around the bottoms. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and create a parent. And I'm going to call this second hand pivot. Bear with me. I do like to name things because I will lose track. So you'll notice something interesting. So the position of the second hand pivot is relative to the world, but now the box, because it's a child, is relative to its parent. So it's now 0, 0, 0, 0. What I'd like to do is to have this be on top of the pivot. So what I want to do here is make it 0.75, right? That's half of 1.5. So now if I look at the pivot is exactly at the bottom of this arm, which is where I want it to be. And the pivot is what we're going to actually be rotating. So as the pivot rotates, the box will rotate around with it. And that's what we want. So now I need to start digging into Protoflux. I am going to, actually what I'm going to do here is deselect all so I don't have the pivot in my face, that gizmo in my face. And we'll switch over, and now I have the Protoflux. If you pull up its context menu, there is a node browser. And so I'm going to set that over here, back up a little bit so I have a little bit more room to work. Pardon me if this gets a little bit fuzzy. There have been some postings in the Discord about this particular issue of sort of this fuzzy rendering, and I'm sure that Frooks and the rest of the devs will get to it when they have more time, but right now it's really not all that critical, and they've got to prioritize, and I get that. All right, so under users, I want the host user. That's going to be me. This clock is always going to be relative to me. All right, and then also I need info, and what I need is my time. So now if I go ahead and plug this in, and I pull out, I'm using my trigger to pull out a display, you can see that it's 5:56 in my time. So that's great. All right, so now what we need to do is go back into the time, because what we want to do is pull out the seconds. I'm going to make a second hand. I think if I said minute hand earlier, I was mistaken. So under time, we want date time, and we want date time second. Nope, did not double click. Date time second, date time second. Okay, there we go, right? Okay, so now if I go ahead and connect this to here and pull this out, using the secondary click to actually pull it out, you can see it's counting the seconds. Right, that matches. All right, so now what we need to do is we need to convert this into angles. So for that, I'm actually going to use operators. And operators are a little bit different now in Protoflux. There are a lot more options. What I need to do is I need to divide 360 by whatever it is that I'm dealing with. And in this case, it's by 60, right? There's 60 seconds in a minute. I'm going all the way around in a minute. So what I want to do is get div. Now you'll notice this is all new. We have an incredible amount of options here for all kinds of ways to divide different types of units with one another, but I just really want to deal with floats. A quick note, this green text here, or this green ribbon here, indicates an int. It's a solid number, so these are integers here. I am actually using floats because later when I deal with axis angle, it takes a float and it's, I don't know, I like it better. Your value, your mileage may value. It doesn't really matter the way you do this. If you want to use an int value division, then that's fine too. Because the nice thing about Resonite is it's going to automatically convert for you where it can. Right? This is actually unnecessary. I mean, you could just go in and if you knew what the value was, you could go ahead and multiply it. But I'm kind of using this as a built-in calculator. It tells me that a 60th of the circle is 6 degrees. So now what I need to do, of course, is to multiply. Same thing, I'm going to go all the way down here to the bottom where it says variable t, and then I'm going to select value mult float. So now what we want, pardon me while I move this over to the side, is we want to say how many seconds I am at. Did I select float too? I did not. Okay. So what's happened here is, oops, pardon me. Resonite has converted. Basically, it's saying, okay, I've got an int. I'm going to go ahead and convert this to a float, which is great. This will come into play later. So now it's telling me how many degrees around the circle I am going to be rotating. So now we actually need to put this into the rotation. Let me move this back over here. Okay, so what we need is under math. I still need to go back. And we want rotation, and we want axis angle. And we want a float Q, which is a quaternion, which I do not understand what it is. Please ask probable prime or someone else. And what we want to do is take this value and we want to translate it into a rotational information. So X, Y, and Z, we're going around the Z-axis. Because the Z-axis is pointing away from me, I think this is going to need to be -1 actually, because I want to rotate clockwise. Let's find out if that works. All right, so the new thing with Protoflux is that I don't have to, as in the old system, pull out a card of some kind. I can actually just grab the rotation here, secondary click, and select drive. This is going to be the driven thing here. It's handy. I really like this because it's labeled. Everything is labeled. So now I just have to hook this up to here, and behold, we have a ticking second hand, and it's working correctly. This is great. Now, for a second hand, I think this sort of clunk, 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 clunk look is fine. I mean, that's very typical of an analog clock. But if you wanted it to be smoother, what you could do is go back to math and go to interpolation. Yes, and use smooth slurp. Float Q again. And what this will do is it will take an input and it will smoothly interpolate from one value to the next. Now the difference between smooth slurp and smooth lerp is that smooth lerp will go from value A to value B, but it will go backwards if value B is lower than value A. So this is a problem because once you click all the way up to the top and you're at, 59th second, then you click over to the 0th second. Now the arm is going to want to rotate around backwards if you use smooth lerp. But smooth slurp understands that we're going in a circle. It understands that this is a cyclical process. So if I go ahead and set this to something like, 2 maybe, because this is a second hand, it's moving quickly. Your mileage may vary if you're dealing with something like a minute hand. You might want it to be a little bit more stately. But now, when I do this, let me close this, and you can see it is smoothly moving. All right, I'm going to close this so that you can see. So that is a second hand. Let me just quickly show you what you need to do in order to handle the hour hand when you're dealing with a 12-hour analog clock. Because the time that comes out of the user time, as you can see, is in 24 hours. So right now it is 6 p.m. my time, so 1800 if you do it in a 24-hour clock. And what I want to do is I need to convert it to 12 hours to go around, my clock. So what I've done is I've used something called Modulus. So it is in the operators section and it's under value modulus, which is right here, value mod T. And I'm using a float, of course, as my modulus here. I'm inputting 12. So what it's going to do is it's going to divide whatever number, it's going to look at it, compare it to 12. And it's essentially kind of subtracting the 12 if it's more than 12. So from 1 until 12, it'll just be 1 to 12. But then once we kick over to 1300 or 1 p.m., then it will translate it to 1. So as you can see now, it's taking my 1800, it's modulus 12ing it, and it's giving me a value of 6. And so now I can plug this into my division here. I'm dividing 360 by 12 now because I'm dealing with 12 hours in the day. That's 30 degrees per hour, and it's now doing the same thing. So obviously it's 6 p.m. The display or the arm, the second or the hour hand should be directly down 180 degrees, and so that's how we've got it. But it is the modulus operator that you're using to convert from 24-hour time to 12-hour AM PM. And I just wanted to cover that quickly before I closed out the video. So that's it. Thank you for watching. I will see you around Resonite.